Welcome, everyone, to our Fantasy Knuckleballers show. My name is Aaron. Joining me is Justin and Rich.
Hey, guys.
And today have several different things to talk about, and let's get started. So the first
I just said let's get right to it.
All right. So the first segment today is we're talking about back-end drafting. In other words, sleepers. All of us have made our sleeper picks, and we're going to share them with you today. So we'll start things off with Rich. Tell us your sleepers, Rich.
Hey, my sleepers are Austin Riley, Paul DeJong, John Means, and then I got a combo. I've got Drew Pomerantz and Will Smith. Just to start with Austin Riley, if you look at his ADP right now, his ADP through Fantasy Pros, which takes NFBC, Fantrax, and Real Time Sports, his ADP is 250, which is after round 20 in a 12-team league. It's Austin Riley. I mean, when you look at his 2019 and his 2020, they look very similar. 239 batting average, 226 and 19. Overall, if you kind of combine them, he's got 131 games, 462 at bats, 26 home runs, 0 steals, and a 232 batting average. So it doesn't look that great. But for the last couple of years, he's been kind of buying time, either playing in the outfield when Josh Donaldson was there, or last year with Camargo in Atlanta. This year, the job is his. A couple things that kind of stood out to me. His max velo is 111. It's elite. If you looked at some of the longest home runs in 2020, I guarantee you he would be on the list. A couple things. His expected batting average was like 263. His exit velo ranked in the 82nd percentile. His expected slugging was in the 71 percentile. He dropped his K rate, which I think is a huge thing, from 36% to 23.8% in 20. He's poised for a breakout. I think if he gets 550 at bats, he's guaranteed to hit 30-plus home runs. He's a guy that has the potential to hit 40. And if he spikes a 250 batting average, he's going to give you a lot of value late in the draft. What do y'all think, guys?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this one, Rich. Historically, he has the hit tool. And one thing you didn't mention for him is historically, he's always hit pretty well for average. And he hasn't done that in the majors. So we do see often where new guys coming up might struggle with an average, and then later on it normalizes. And I would expect the same thing from him. So I'm with you there. I like the pick.
My number 2 guy is not a sexy pick because he seems like he's been around for a while, but Paul DeJong. I mean, he's only 27. He turns 28 in August. When I first started picking him, I was thinking I was going to pick somebody else because, like I said, it seems like he's been around for a long time. But if you just look at what he's done on the field from 2017 to 2019, he's averaged 25 home runs, 70 runs, 70 RBIs, 3 stolen bases in 127 games. And that was with him missing a good chunk of time back in 18. He only played 115 games. For me, I throw away his 2020 season. He only had 3 home runs, especially because the Cardinals were hit hard with COVID. I think he's a player that's primed for a bounce back. He's also kind of fills that middle infield position at shortstop. And he possibly could chip in a few steals. When you look at his 2019 season, I think he had 9 stolen bases. Now, that's the only year that he's ran any amount. But if you look at him, he's a career 251 hitter. He's going 257. If I can get him as a middle infielder, after round 20, and he hits 25 bombs with the potential to hit 30 as a middle infielder, I'm taking that all day.
I agree. I think a lot of people are going to sleep on DeJong this year because he was hurt a lot last year. And also they have Tommy Edmonds take a lot of playing time, but that shouldn't really take away from DeJong at shortstop. A lot of people are going to sleep on him because he was injured. So that's your opportunity to take a player that's going to produce well at a very much later value.
My number 3 guy is kind of I guess you'd say a fantasy sleeper darling right now. A lot of people talk about him, but it's John Means with the Orioles. I saw a recent interview on MLB. Coming up through the minors, he was not a high velo guy, but with the analytics, and he's kind of one of those guys that really bought in. He changed his approach, was able to add some to his spin rate, change his pitch mix, and just from listening to him talk, he became a completely different pitcher over the last couple of years. And really, when you look at him, his velos jumped to 94. If you look at his numbers from 20, he had 43 innings. He had a 4.53 ERA, but a 0.98 whip. If you look at his 2019, his whip was 1.14. The thing that I like about him is that his K rate jumped. He went from 19% in 2019 to 2020. He went to 23.86%. If you're looking at the ERA, you got to take into account the first 4 games of the season. I believe he was injured. It took him a little while to get going, but if you look at his last 6 starts, brought it on. He's a low walk guy. A lot of times when we're looking at fantasy players, we have a tendency to look at ERA first, but it's important to remember whip is just as an important category. He's a low whip guy. He's going to get you below a 1-2 whip every year, and I think he has the potential to spike a 350, 375 ERA. I like him a lot. He's going as the 67th starting pitcher off the board. At that point, you could even put him in a share time with like Herman Marquez, or drop him if he comes off and doesn't perform that well. But he's going fantasy ADP 221. I like him, and I think he has the potential for upside.
That's a very good pick, Rich. Looking at his numbers over the last 3 years, his expected ERA has actually dropped by a run each of the last 3 years. He's consistently gotten better. The only downside to Means would be the team he's playing for, Baltimore. Because he's playing for Baltimore and they don't expect to win a lot of games, he's going to be suffering in the wins category. But you're right. Expect a low ERA, a low whip, and he should probably help you out with some strikeouts as well. Concur with that pick.
Well, my next one, I kind of took a cop out. I took a closer combo. I took Drew Pomerantz and Will Smith. Pomerantz is going 257. Will Smith is going 262. One of the things I'm not big on is taking closers early. Both these guys are in positions to play for good teams. And right now, I think Pomerantz is probably in a share time with Emilio Pagan. And Will Smith is the leader in the clubhouse as a closer. But the things that I love about him is in Drew Pomerantz's last 45 innings as a relief pitcher, 74 Ks. He's got a whip less than 1. His ERA is 2. He's been elite since moving into the bullpen. You have to forget about his past history as a starter in Colorado. He plays for a great team. I got to believe he's going to win the closer role. If not, he's still going to provide good ratios. Will Smith, throughout 2020, he was one of the guys that got COVID. He never came back, never performed well. But if you look at his 2018, 2019 seasons, he's got 117 games, 118 innings, 167 strikeouts. What I'm looking for is not a 1K per inning guy, but I'm looking for somebody that's going to beat those ratios. He has the contract, 3 years, $13 million a year. I haven't heard any talk of the Braves bringing anybody back. I got to believe that he's going to be either the leader or in a committee there in Atlanta. Again, his whip was around 1. His ERA was solid. I like taking either one of these guys or both these guys late. Go ahead, Justin. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, so on this one, I'm just not convinced that he earns the full-time closing job. Atlanta's been one of the teams where they haven't really stuck with a closer. The last few years, we've seen a big rotation there. And when you got guys like Chris Martin, Luke Jackson, even other guys that are starting pitchers that may falter and maybe move to a bullpen role And for me, that's just too high of a pick for a guy that I'm not certain is going to get me consistent saves throughout the year. When you talk about a standard 5x5 league, when you're drafting relief pitchers, they better be getting you saves, or they better have a lot of innings and very low ratios. And I don't see that on any of those for him. I mean, he has the good ratios, but I don't see him getting the amount of innings to make a difference. And I'm just not sold that he's going to win that job and keep it. I see them going more of a committee based off who's hot. So that shies me away from picking Will Smith higher than what his current ADP is.
I'll add a few 2 cents worth to this. So I think if you're looking for a closer kind of in the later rounds and you need somebody to take a chance on, Will Smith would be a great pick. Right now, they don't have a lot of other options in the bullpen. There's a good chance they re-sign Melanson, and if they do, I'm sure they're going to give him the first opportunity to do that. But there's a lot of ifs there. Like I said, as long as you draft Will Smith as a person to hold, somebody that will probably get close saves down the road, and go ahead and take Will Smith. Drew Pomeranz, I'm much, much higher on. I do think he's going to win the starting job, barring San Diego signing another great free agent or making another tremendous trade out of nowhere. So unless something happens between now and end of March, I would say Drew Pomeranz is in a great spot to get the most saves in the league. So he's one of those closers that has the ability to go much higher than his ADP, and I agree with Rich on that one. Will Smith is kind of a draft and see.
And my thing is, in the past, I've been one of those guys that might have reached. I took a couple Colorado closers a couple of years, never had good results. I took Archie Bradley one year. I don't think he's elite. The thing I want to do, I want to be sure of, if I'm taking a closer, if I'm taking a guy that I'm projecting, is I want to make sure that he's a really good pitcher and he's going to have good ratios. If I plug him in, I know that he's going to help my team, and then I can project. There's always going to be people on the waiver wire that I can pick up if I see somebody else that I like better. But if I'm projecting, I want to hit on one of them. If I can hit this late in the draft on a player like that, that allows me to take a hitter earlier where somebody else took a closer.
So, in other words, you're telling us that you stink at drafting closers, and we shouldn't take your advice on this. Is that what you're saying?
Experience helps. That's all I can say.
He's definitely not the closer whisperer that you are, Aaron, but
that is true, Aaron. That is very true.
Aaron is the king of picking up every single person on the waiver wire who may get a save in the next week coming up. So Aaron is definitely the closer whisperer, and we know Rich likes to hold on closers, and I'm somewhere in the middle. If I see an elite closer on the board still high, I'll take them. Especially we discussed it on the first podcast, I believe, about how the landscape of closers has changed, and they're kind of at a premium now. But all right, thanks, Rich.
All right, Justin, we'll let you go next.
All right, man. So my first one here is I'm going to talk about Hunter Renfroe a little bit. This is a guy who is signed with Boston. As of right now, he's projected to be an everyday starter in the outfield, and his current ADP is 371. 371, late 30th round on a 12-team league. Guys that are going ahead of him are people like Michael Chavez, Christian Pace, Robbie Grossman, Kevin Pillar. To me, that's insane. You have a guy that's going in the 30th round that if he gets the at-bats as a full-time player, even 550 at-bats, we're looking at 30-plus homers and 10 stolen bases. The average is obviously a concern. Last year was exceptionally low, 156. Kind of a scary point, but I expect that to normalize, especially if he gets consistent at-bats, something he's never really had. You're talking about a 30 home run, 10 stolen base guy in the 30th round. Sign me up, brother. I'm all in on that guy.
I like him. The only thing, he's a Mississippi State guy. I like him. I rooted for him when he was with the Padres, and I rooted for him with the Rays. My only concern is that batting average is career 228. The other side of that is He's always had a high K rate. He's at 28%. The major league average is 21%. There's some concerns that he could drop another low average and lose playing time. But at 30th round, you make a good point.
Yeah,
Take a shot.
That's the whole thing. Where he's going right now is the 30th round. And to get the potential of 30-plus home runs, 10-plus stolen bases that late, it's an absolute steal. Aaron, you want to add anything to that one?
Sure, I'll add a little bit. You're probably right. 30th round, it's probably good to take a streamer on and see it's your lottery ticket, more or less. However, I wouldn't necessarily bank on him carrying you in home runs or giving you that little extra. He's going to have the playing time, which is probably step one in any debate. However, Tampa usually don't get rid of players that are going to help their team in the future. So if you're Tampa and you're giving up on it, they're a really good judge on talent. If you're giving up on somebody like Renfroe, then there's probably a reason. So as long as you draft him late, he'll be a fine lottery ticket. I wouldn't draft him early thinking that he's going to propel your team to the championship.
Hey man, when I'm drafting the late rounds, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for average across all categories. I'm looking for somebody who's going to give me a big boost in a category or two, something that's going to put me over top. And this guy fits that profile to a T.
Agreed.
So my next one here is Alex Kirilloff. Right now he's going around pick 266, which is the 22nd round. And this is a guy who's always been a highly rated prospect. He's got, 65 hit power, 55 run power, just an overall good hitter, doesn't strike out a lot, can hit to all fields. And actually last year he showed us a little bit of speed that we hadn't seen before. So I fully expect him. He's got the track record to come in and make an impact. I think kind of what's holding him back in his ADP right now is people are unsure of his playing time looking at this year. But looking at the Twins roster, all indications are that he's going to earn a full-time spot. And to me, given his track record, I fully expect him. As long as he gets those at bats, I expect him to outperform that 22nd round pick.
I've got something to say. I like him. He has a good minor league track record, but he's really never hit for a lot of power. I mean, when you look at his minors, he had 9, 7, 13. When I'm looking for my outfield or first base position, I agree he's going to play. But is he gonna throw 14 home runs? I don't want that for my outfielder. I want somebody that's going to spike 20 or steal 20.
So Kirilloff got his first major league hit in the playoffs. He's the first major leaguer to ever do that. For the Twins, who was in a do or die position in the playoffs, wanted to get that first playoff series win in a really long time. They brought him up, wanted to kickstart the offense. He did pretty well in the postseason. So there's a good chance that the Twins will rely on him in 2021. Right now, barring any trades or acquisitions that they could do, he's competing with Jake Cave for an outfield spot, which shouldn't be very difficult to surpass him. There might be some platooning early on until he proves himself, but he should get plenty of playing time. They may try to manipulate his playing time by leaving him in the minors to start the season, but a lot of teams do that, and you can almost have to expect that.
He's a guy that I like coming up through the minors. I'm excited to follow him and see what he does.
All right.
Yeah, so he's a guy that I like through the minors, and I'm just excited to see what he's going to do this year. I expect him to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation.
Hey, got a question for you. Do you believe? A lot of players come up in the minors, they don't hit for a lot of homers, and then they come to the majors and they start hitting for power. Do you believe his power is going to show?
I do. He's one of those guys, like I said, I like track record guys. And you mentioned earlier, he doesn't have a track record for homers, but he's got the hit tool. He's got the power ratings that are there. Once guys get up to the majors, all that changes and their hitting approach, it tends to change. And a lot of these top prospect hitters, they do hit for more power. And I expect him to be one of those, power rating alone. So we'll see what happens. My next guy here is Caleb Smith. His right now his ADP is 315, which is the 26th round. The reason I like this guy is, first of all, 26th round for a starting pitcher. He's always had a high K per nine, except for the 2017 season with New York. But the main thing we look for in pitchers is when you see a pitcher that making progress from one year to the next, you have to look at the underlying stats and see, was it just lucky or is there a reason behind that? And when you dig into the numbers here with Caleb, his slider usage is way up and his curveball is way down since that year. His fastball velocity is up 92, which is pretty good. But the main thing is the slider usage. Last year, he had a 46% whiff rate on that slider, which is the 83 mile an hour pitch. And that's up from 31% the year before. And, he's throwing that thing 30% of the time. The whiff rate is the highest of his career was last year. So every indication that I see, we discussed this too on a previous podcast, is the good pitchers, the great pitchers, they find ways to get better and they work on their secondary pitches and they get rid of what's not working and they hone in on what is working. He seems to be doing that. I just think he's going to have a good year, coming off of last year, which was really good. And I think he's going to perform way better than that 315 ADP.
Well, I think the reason they're ignoring him is he has trouble staying healthy. I agree with you. He has a great K per nine. He has the potential to keep improving. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to be a better team than they were last year.
He has one quality that I always look for in pitchers, is that a high K per nine. He does have that. He can strike people out. He's right now, I wouldn't classify him that high because of his whip, and he's not been able so far to get his ERA down. He is only 29. He's playing a ballpark that gives up a lot of home runs. So if you take that into consideration and draft him accordingly, I think you'll be fine.
Okay. My next guy here is Zach Davies. ADP is 225 right now, which is the late 18th round. I got a clap from Rich. That means he must be on board with this pick. When you look at Zach Davies, he's always been kind of a middle of the road pitcher until last year. He kind of came into his own. We got to do some digging of, why were his numbers so good last year. He went from a career 3.79 whip, under 3 last year, career best ERA last year. K per 9 has never been good. You're talking about a career average of 6.5, which is not good, but last year he did get it up to 8.2. The thing with him is two things. He doesn't walk a lot of people. And then, as I explained earlier, when you dig into the numbers of why was last year so different from all the other years, there are two main reasons. His changeup was historically around 20%. And last year it was up over 40%. And then on that pitch alone last year, he had a 35% whiff rate, which is pretty damn good. The other thing is historically he was always sinker guy. The majority, over 50% of his pitches were sinkers, which was not really a good pitch for him if you look at the numbers on that pitch, and the usage on that went way down, which is kind of all that together kind of explains why he had such a good year last year, and I expect it to continue this year.
I like Davies. I think he gets a bum rap, I think, because of the K per nine. But if you look at his track record, he knows how to pitch. I mean, his ERA's been a little below 4, I think, except for 1 year. He's always gave you good ratios with the exception of strikeouts. The thing I love about Davies for this year is he's playing in the Central. So he gets to face the Pirates 18 times. He gets to face the Brewers, who are not a great offensive team. He's getting to face the Cardinals. I mean, the Central is right now the weakest division. And the thing that I love about Davies, besides the fact that he's going so late, and he's a guy that you can stream, especially early in the year. His first 2 weeks, he gets to face the Pirates twice. I'm going to be picking Davies just to start him early in the season. And he might be a guy that I keep on my roster, or he might be a guy that I stream and take him in and out. But if I'm looking to get a heads up, one of the things I'm starting to look at this year is looking at, out of the gate, who do these guys have? Maybe that first month, if somebody has Pirates, Marlins, that's going to be a pitcher that I want to target early, especially if they have a good track record, and I think Davies does.
I want to take the opposite side of the coin here. It seems like I've been agreeing with you guys the entire segment. Let me take the counterpoint. So you're right. The competition he's facing is going to be a lot less this year than last year, but he's going from a pitcher-friendly park to a more of a even pitcher's advantage. That kind of balances each other out, in my opinion. Less competition, but more of a hitter's park than San Diego was. In the last 2 years, his ERA has been fairly decent, 3.55 and 2.73 respectively. But his expected ERA in both of those years have been over 5. So some of his advanced metrics doesn't support the fact that he's pitching as well as he has. And I would almost expect those numbers, those ERA and WHIP, to go up from where it is. So I could almost expect him pitching in Chicago this year to have an ERA of about 4.5. That's not somebody that I'm going to be targeting.
I said we shall see.
The thing I like about him, and I'm going to go back to it, the Pirates are trying to be the worst team ever in baseball history. I think I heard something about Jameson Taillon being traded or possibly being traded. They're going out to put the worst lineup ever on a baseball field to where they could compete with Major League the movie. And I've got Zach Davies who's going to get to pitch against them early. I'm taking it. I'm sorry, Aaron. I'm taking it.
Yeah, you're right. At the very worst, you could stream them against the Pirates and some of the other NL Central foes. But yeah, you're right. Like, the Pirates are going to be horrible. Another week went by and another Pirate is going to be traded. What are you going to do? This is the 2021 offseason.
Yeah, we could spend a whole segment on pity for Pirates fans. We'll save that for another day.
Aaron, who do you have?
All right, my first pick is Candelero for Detroit. He is one of those young players that have made strides over the last several years. His average ADP is 262. He's 27 years old. His exit velocity and his expected slugging percentage, as well as his hard hit percentage, has steadily went up the past 3 years. That players' performance plateau around ages of 27, 28, 29, and 30. From a player's plateau perspective, he's just reaching his plateau, and he's made steady improvement the last 3 years. And those are the telltale signs, in my opinion. If you look at a lot of players that break out, those are the things that line up to say a player's on the cusp of breaking out. So I would look for a big, big year for him in 2021.
Yeah, on him, I get all the underlying stats for hitting are going up. He's not playing in a hitter friendly park. With a guy like him, you're not gonna be able to predict his batting average because it's a roller coaster. I mean, he might bat 300, he might bat 200. So you're really depending on power there, fantasy perspective. And until those numbers translate into home runs, I'm not sure that I'm buying that. Because he's not going to get you any stolen bases. And like I said, you're relying on power, and I'm not sure that I'm picking him in that spot with a guy who might only get me 20 home runs, and that's it.
Aaron, I liked him as a prospect when he was with the Cubs, and he was kind of blocked by Chris Bryant. He's going to get playing time. I guess my one concern is I'm a batting average guy. His BABIP was 372, so his batting average was inflated, but I agree. It looks like he's making progress. I think he can be a 20 home run guy. I just wonder what it comes with as far as batting average.
Well, one thing that I've always struggled with in roto leagues is batting average. I usually really good with home runs and stolen bases, and I've been notorious about struggling with batting average. I think he will make it strides this year to improve that. He won't lead the league in batting average. I think he'll be 250, 260 batting average. Is reasonable for him.
I think if he does that, he's got value for sure.
So my next one here is Nick Madrigal. He's just came up last year. Been long touted as a high prospect. His average ADP is 205, and he's only 23 years old. He's one of those guys that's known for his batting average. He has hit for average every single stop along the way in the minors. He has a high on base percentage. He's not going to be the guy that gets you the home runs. He'll probably get you 5 to 8 home runs for the entire season, but he's going to probably get you 15 to 20 stolen bases and give you that high average to even out other guys that you may have on your team, like Candelero. He's one really good player that I would like to pair with Candelero.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the batting average. Obviously, the ratios are important. We discussed it before. When you get behind in a ratio category, it's much harder to fix that versus the accounting category. But I think you might be underestimating his stolen bases. I mean, he's a fast guy, and the White Sox lineup, it's going to be pretty strong this year. And if he can get on base, I expect them to use him aggressively.
I have to root for the guy because as a vertically challenged guy who tops out at 5'8", I'm rooting for the little guy. At the same time, I agree that he's got a great batting average. If he spikes 340, 331, hey, he's going to have value. My concern is he's a total zero with power. You're going to lose 20 home runs, 25 home runs at a position that you're going to have to make up somewhere else. So that's something to think about. And not only power, but you got to think about RBIs. I think the runs scored are going to be great, but he's a guy that if he gets you 50 RBIs, I think that's on the high side. He's probably more of a 40 RBI guy with 1 or 2 home runs. So you're going to have to make up 20 or 30 RBIs and 25 home runs somewhere.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, what's his ADP right now?
205.
Ooh, that's higher than I thought. A lot's going to rely on where he bats in that lineup. Do you know where he's projected to bat right now? Because if they slot him in at 7 or 8, then I'm totally against your pick here. But if they have him slotted to lead off, then you have an argument.
Most teams don't have a guy that's going to be able to have a 330 batting average and a 380 on base percentage. And when they do have those guys, they're going to slot them high. If they do anything other than bat him first or second, I would be totally shocked.
I think he's going to bat first or second. I'm with Aaron on that. I mean,
you're drafting him in the 17th round or 17th or 18th rounds. I think it's really good value there. Having earlier in the draft, you might take those players that has high home runs but low batting average. And this is one of those guys that will help you make up the difference there and give you a plus category in a batting average. And like I said, I'm not the type of guy that normally worries about a batting average. If you're going to compete in leagues, you cannot team batting average of 230, 240. You have to have these guys boost up your batting average.
I'm rooting for him.
Right. Next.
So the next one here is Jordan Montgomery. He's kind of like the forgotten man in the Yankees rotation. And to be quite honest, I have never been a big fan of Yankee prospects. They've never seemed to work out, especially when they trade them. They never seem to pay off ever since Derek Jeter was the last Yankees prospect that turned out to be really great. They've had some here and there. Like I say, even Gary Sanchez's career has been up and down. But Jordan Montgomery is kind of the forgotten man. 3 years ago, he came out, had a really nice season. The next season, he went under the knife for Tommy John's early in the season. For a year and a half, he was out. Everybody forgot about him. He came back last year, and he had struggled with control. If you look at his advanced metrics, he's a much better pitcher than his 5 ERA. His expected ERA is around 3.5. Gives up less than 30% hard hit rate. So there's a lot of metrics that support this notion that he's a better pitcher than normal stats would appear. And like I said, this year they have Garrett Cole. They have a few other starters, but Jordan Montgomery is going to get rotation spot. And he's going to put up good numbers. By the end of the year, you'll be really happy to take him. He's right now going at...
Good argument. You can always make a good argument if you don't tell us what his ADP is.
Yeah,
it is, right?
He's going in the 50th round. Pick him up, everybody.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. He's playing for the Yankees. He's going to get some wins. I think he's probably a good guy to look at streaming, especially at the back end of the draft, where maybe you have 4 pitchers and you just rotate them in and out of 2 slots.
Yeah, and again with the AFC East, we already talked about Pittsburgh, a Baltimore lineup that's not looking very good either. He's got that going for him. The thing that stands out with me is his K per 9. Even though his other stats really were not good at all the last 2 years, his K per 9 is way up there. And you're right. If he can get his ERA back to what's expected, then you're right. He, based on where he's going, I don't know. You haven't told us yet. and I haven't looked it up.
Jordan
But
Montgomery is going around 19 or 20 right now. So you're getting him really late, and I think the Yankees are going to win a lot of games, unlike Baltimore, which we talked about earlier this year. The Yankees are going to win a lot of games. You could really conceivably expect at least 12 wins, probably more along the lines of 15 if the season goes as I expected.
ooh, you're pushing it there, brother. 15 wins? No,
Optimistic.
It is the Yankees.
it is the Yankees, but yeah, you're right. It's a good call out here. If he can normalize, the ERA and WHIP and continue with the high K per 9.
I think you're right, Aaron. I think he's a good pick.
He's projected to be the number four guy right now for the Yankees. So you said, one of the categories that I hate, it's my most hated category in all of fantasy baseball is wins, because you just can't predict them. I mean, it's the one category. It really is a crapshoot. But your best bet to get wins is to get pitchers on really good teams. It's to get good
here.
I love wins, Justin. I love wins.
Wins has been the thorn in my side for 3 years now, and it just.
I love the randomness of wins, because you can pick players all day long. I mean, there is some skill to wins, though.
No.
Pitchers that pitch late into games get more wins than other guys. Pitchers that pitch more innings.
Well, wins. You have that. But as far as starting pitching, wins is a freaking crapshoot. I mean, as a Reds fan, you're talking to somebody who watches guys for the last 10 years, pitch 7, 8 innings of one hit ball and not get a win for it. Going back to Cueto and Leake, and even the last year, Bauer and Gray, when they throw these gems and then they don't get wins for it. It's frustrating.
Another important thing to consider when you're thinking about wins is not only is the team good, are they going to win a lot of games, but is their bullpen good? Because if they have a bullpen that struggles, they're going to give up a lot of leads, and that's going to cost you wins. And the Yankees bullpen, they've invested in that for years. And with Chapman, Ottavino, and all the other arms they have in the bullpen, they're not going to give up a lot of leads. That's another reason why I think you can expect 12 and even 15 wins from Montgomery this year. All right, the next player on my list is Nate Pearson. He's probably one of the top pitching prospects in baseball for years. Him and Mackenzie Gore have been 1 and 2 as far as pitching prospects for a really long time. He throws really, really hard. He has a great fastball, and he has a total wipeout slider. That's the good thing with him. The bad things he's an injury risk because he throws so hard, and his mechanics are not as smooth as some of the other pitchers. But I would say his advanced metrics was much better than his 6 ERA last year. His expected ERA was around 4.5. And as long as he stays healthy, throws the way he's capable of throwing, he's throwing in the AL East. Unlike last year, he'll be facing other divisions as well. I expect great things from him as long as he stays healthy. And like I said, health is a legitimate concern with him. But he's being drafted around 209, and I think that's the ADP there. He's well worth it, even be drafted higher than 209.
I want to knock your pick, Aaron, but I can't in this case. Plays for a great team. He's one of those guys, if it does all come together, he could be a number 2, number 3 starter for your team. If it doesn't come through, you can always drop him. I mean, he does have that pedigree. He does have the stuff. It's just a matter of putting it together.
Yeah, the thing I like about him is even though he's got a really, really good fastball, he doesn't overuse it. Like you already covered, he mixes in his slider, which is a really good pitch for him. And as he progresses, his major league, his coaches are going to be honing on a third pitch, which is going to make him even better. I like the pick.
All right. So that wraps up our back-end drafting, a.k.a. sleeper picks for the year 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to check us out on our website at fantasyknuckleballers.com. You can email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com or check us out on Twitter at fknuckleballers.